All right, sweet. I don't, yeah, go ahead. Okay. Wait. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's really a pleasure for you to take some time out of your evening to take your first steps to millionaire in the making. So thank you so much for coming out, first of all. A little bit about myself before we get started. So my name is Jee. I'm one of the associate advisors at Financial Literacy Counsel. I'll go into my story in just a second, but before that, just a few thanks to the people helping me out here tonight. So for online people, you can't see, but we have Jacob behind the camera. He'll be monitoring the questions and comments that come in. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat box below, or we'll have actually a Slido, a different software coming up where you can scan and then ask your questions and make comments there as well. So thank you, Jacob. And then quick shout out to Ray, who's downstairs right now, just hauling people up. So thank you. And then of course, thank you to Sarah as well for keeping track of the scores and whatnot. But this is really just so exciting for me. You know, I've been really looking forward to this day. For the last couple of years, I've had a chance to speak and work with thousands of young professionals, actually, just like yourselves. And I've been able to pinpoint some of the main questions that people have had and the things that we can make adjustments to really accelerate yourself to millionaire status. So that's really the value that I hope that you're able to take away today. In terms of how I came about entering this industry, and oh, sorry, I'll do it, yeah. In terms of how I came about entering the industry, in Vancouver, I was born and raised, but I moved a ton. And so just quick show of hands, has anyone ever had to move homes? Has anyone had to move homes more than once? More than 2 times? More than 3 times? More than 4 times? More than 5 times? Okay. You can probably say that it's not the most fun thing in the world, right? And so for me, growing up in Vancouver, I actually moved every 6 months to 2 years. And the reason why was my parents had a hard time managing their money. And so I just remember we were moving from one city to a cheaper city to a cheaper city. But there was this one summer where we had this very large inheritance that came in. And my parents took that money and we moved to downtown Vancouver. We did what we thought was best with it. And what we did was we rented a penthouse apartment, bought BMWs, traveled, luxury clothes, you name it. And then about 1.5 years later, we spent everything. Yeah, I still remember it's like Saturday morning, I wake up, seems like we have infinite money. And then mom's crying in the living room. And it's like, whoa, you know, my mom never cries, like at least in front of me. And so what's going on here? And she just told me to sit down. I have something I need to share with you. And she just told me, you know, we have to move again. I don't know what happened, but it's just all gone. And so I just remember like, whoa, I wasn't even upset. I was just really curious. You know, how did this happen where some people can start off with so much and then end up with so little, while other families can start off with so little but end up with so much? And so clearly there was a gap in just understanding here. It wasn't a matter of how much income you were earning per se. And so that's really what got me interested in, you know, how can I help other people? Because, you know, if my dad just had someone to talk to for those series of years, then maybe his whole family's life could look different and it could be looking different for the years to come. And so my goal is looking at, well, what was it that they did? What could they have done differently so that maybe you and your kids don't have to move? Maybe you don't have kids yet, but one day finances can impact you this way. And so my goal is to allow you to move because you want to, not because you have to. And so that's the idea. So let's dive into things here. And so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so with the outline of what we're going to be diving into, first and foremost, I'll give a quick shout out to sponsors. A number of them were very, very generous with the giveaways and the support. So I need to give a shout out to them. And then the framework that we'll be using. So if you've been joining me for the past few years now, you'll know that a lot of my material has been somewhat consistent, but we're actually introducing a brand new framework. And we're going to be using this as a springboard to build the plan off of. So I'm going to be talking about something called the financial house. And how I want you to view it is like this. In order for these 9 different rooms in this house to operate properly, we need to first understand what it is that you want to accomplish, what your values are. And then from there, I want you to organize these rooms so that your money actually serves you the way that you hope. That's the idea. And then the first half of what we'll be talking about is building a proper foundation. Think of it this way. Imagine I'm in Vancouver here today. I think there's a few people joining online that are from Toronto and other places, but we're in Vancouver right now. And my goal is to get to Hawaii. And there's this large ocean between Vancouver and Hawaii. So I need to think to myself, what are the potential obstacles that might come up in the way that might hinder my progress from going from Vancouver to Hawaii? I don't care how great of a motor you have on this boat, that it rips through the water and gets there quickly. If a big wave comes along and just destroys my boat to begin with. So I need to make sure the foundation, the build of my boat is really, really sturdy so I get there in one piece. And how we're going to do this is by looking at potential risks that might hinder your financial progress, and then having a proper spending plan in place so that it's effortless and you have proper systems that allow you to grow your wealth efficiently. Then what we're going to do in the second half is look at how can I actually grow my wealth? So what kind of motor can I attach to this boat so it's not just me paddling myself from Vancouver to Hawaii? That's a lot of work and it's unrealistic. So what kind of a motor can I attach? An adjustment can I make to my boat so I get to Hawaii with less effort and a lot quicker? And so how we're going to do that is by looking at tax planning. The reason this is important is because wealth is not measured based on how much you earn. It's based on how much you keep. And so to keep more of your wealth, there's two things we can do. You can, number one, spend less money on things that you want to buy. But that's no fun. No one wants to hear that. So we're going to ignore that one. Number two is you can actually pay less taxes. It sounds weird every time I say that, but I mean like in a legal sense. So there's a couple things that you can do. It's almost like the government laid down the steps for you, but it's a matter of, do you know what steps are available that you can take to decrease your tax bill so you keep more of your wealth? Once you keep more of your wealth though, what do you do with it? Do you just leave it in a checking account, or are there better options out there? Probably some better options. We'll talk about investing. A lot of people say investing is risky, and it's true. You will be taking a risk when you invest your money. But what I want to talk about is the risk that you're taking. How do we make sure that you get paid for taking that risk, get compensated? So how do we make the best bang for your buck with the risk that you're taking? And then the last part here is estate planning. Now, a lot of us might be thinking, I've heard of this. Isn't this around financial planning at death? I'm a young person. I thought this was for a young person's workshop. And it absolutely is, okay? And you might be thinking, well, why are we talking about this now? Let me explain to you. Imagine you're my doctor, okay? And I'm your patient. And so I come to you and I tell you, hey, doctor, I'm 25 years old right now. And I decided I want to start smoking, drinking 10 Red Bulls a day, living a really sedentary, lazy lifestyle, just never eating my leafy greens. But when I turn age 65, that's when I'll start exercising, eating my vegetables, quitting smoking. What do you think of this plan? This makes no sense, right? There's a couple things that we need to do earlier on that will affect our health later on. Same thing applies to our finances. There's a couple things that we should be aware of the way we structure our accounts today that will make an impact for us later down the line. But it really helps to structure those accounts earlier on when we're in our 20s and 30s so that it pays dividends later down the road. So hopefully that's something that's really exciting for you to look forward to. This is like my favorite stuff to talk about. So yeah, let's get started here. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, Jake, can you go back? Yeah, thank you. Okay, quick shout out to the sponsors here. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, a huge thank you for these different companies. Dimensional Fund Advisors, IA Clarington, Investia, Empire Life, Custom Plan, FLC, Canada Life, IA Financial Group, McKenzie, CPP, RBC, BMO, and Pacific Blue Cross. They've given a number of different prizes over on the left here, and then just with the giveaway posts and whatnot as well. So just, yeah, huge thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. And then a number of different local businesses as well. Show of hands, have you guys heard of some of these companies on the screen? Have you guys heard of any of these companies? Yeah, so I'll just run through them really quickly here. So VTA Apparel gave a $100 gift card for their merchandise. It's a female-owned and founded company. They do athleisure and they're based in Vancouver. Like, really just not enough good things to say about them. So thank you, Selena and Vitae. Baked Cookies. They're a local sort of bakery and they do a number of different cookies. Their thing is like, they have hockey puck, like weighted cookies. So they're really girthy and thick. It's awesome. Then we have District Bean Coffee. So District Bean does coffee services for small businesses. So definitely hit them up. Hokey Pokey and Sakai YVR. It's like sushi and poke bowls. You'll see in your bags for people in person, you'll have a 20% voucher there. And then my giveaways also had $100 of meals given away there. Modern Wellness Massage Therapy, based out in Richmond. They offered a free 45-minute massage, and they do like total health, holistic health with their RMT services and acupuncture. Really just awesome, phenomenal company there. Pacific Coast RMT, this one is especially close to my heart. For those of you who watched my YouTube video of me speaking at my church, the owner there like changed my life. And so if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I encourage you to watch that video. But yeah, I just can't say good enough things about him. Revolve Therapy as well is another RMT clinic and acupuncture clinic based out in Vancouver. They also do direct billing as well, by the way. And so, Native Media is a social media management marketing company based in Vancouver as well. Okay, so got all that out of the way. Let's dive into things. So in order for you to participate with the quizzes, in order for you to participate with comments, questions, we're going to be using this software called Slido. And how it works is you can scan this or you can click the link. Maybe Jacob, if you're able to, are you able to send it in the chat? Thank you. And so the first poll that will be up, Jacob's going to put it up in just a second. And it's going to ask something like, what's your level of financial literacy? Have fun with it. But please be like PG-13, right? Don't get me like in trouble. But yeah, describe in one word, what's your level of financial literacy? And then it's going to be a word cloud. So let's see, where's everybody at? And that helps me get a gauge of who my audience is as well. So let's take a look here. Let me know if it doesn't work or anything. How's it going? Sweet. And then let's pop up in the... yeah, and then share that. Okay. Thank you, thank you. All right, let's see what people are saying. Oh, sorry. If you go down and then hit, scroll down, zoom out a little bit. Present. Yeah. There you go. Okay, let's see. What are people saying? Okay, beginner, decent. Beginner. Looks like you need to work on more than just your finances. Not much, beginner, mid, poor, noob, intermediate, shameless, shamefully ignorant. Okay, fortunately, this is anonymous, so you can really just like be vulnerable. It's okay. Probably healthy. But that's awesome. Let's close that. So it looks like people are in their beginner stages, and that is okay. Also, just a few like instructions on this. You'll see on the top there, the top tab is Q&A. If you have questions throughout, Jacob's monitoring it. Shoot your questions in there. I think it's anonymous for the most part, unless you want to like put your name in there. And then there's also polls on the right side, so you can toggle back and forth. Alrighty. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, disclaimer. This is unbiased material. I don't work for a single bank or a single investment insurance company, but rather I work for you, the client, and have access to all the different companies. So none of this is made with commercial bias, and none of this is financial advice. Please consult your financial planner before making any decisions. Legal stuff. Alrighty. With that being said, I am trying to help you be less like this. Thief breaks into my house looking for money. Let me help you look. I know this one. I will not read out loud, but it's pretty funny. And I want to help you be more like this. Yes. Okay, so people in person, are you ready to be a millionaire? Let's try that one more time. Are you ready? All right, that's better. That's better. All right, let's have some fun. So here's the financial house, the framework we're going to be using to build your financial plan. The main thing I want you to know about this is in order for you to build this house properly, I need you to build a solid foundation first and foremost, and then look to make it big. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to say. And there's a number of different rooms you'll see here. We won't hit all of them for the sake of time, but we'll go into some of them. And we'll hit the key ones that a young professional should be at least wary about so that you know what your options are. Okay, you'll see it again. So yeah, don't worry. Okay, so if there's anything from the next 2 hours in this masterclass I want you to take away, it's this. Now, I've only done this live one time before, so give me a break if I do it perfectly. Let's give this a shot, okay? If there's anything I want you to take away from this session, it's this. Imagine this is your financial plan, okay? This represents like your bank accounts, and this water here represents your income. So when you start working, what happens is this. Your financial plan starts to get funded with water. And you're like, wow, that's great. I was a student maybe, and I was, like not making any money, but now I'm all of a sudden making several $1,000s a month, and my bank account is just filling up. And so you decide, well, let me, live my life a little bit. And so maybe I'll move out and I'll have a few different expenses come up. So with the expenses, it causes your plan to start draining a little bit. Oh, there we go. So it starts to drain, but that's okay because we have more money coming in. That's not a problem. But then the problem starts when I decide to maybe spend irresponsibly, rack up a number of different debts. And so that's when this really starts to pile up. Imagine there's more holes. Okay. But the big problem is this. So these things are the typical things that people go into when they start working and start developing their plan. The big problem, though, is when you are struck in with something that was unanticipated. So let's just say you get into a car crash, you're very sick, you get hurt, and there's large hospital bills. When something like this happens, that's when the plan starts to really get hit with more and more expenses that were unexpected and a lot bigger. Let's see if I can, there we go. And you'll see it start to drain. And the problem here is you reach for that cup, but you actually can't go to work anymore. And then what's left of your plan is this, the dry bag. So this is what I need for us to understand and for us to plan for. First and foremost, this is the biggest potential hindrance of actually getting to the millionaire status. If we can address this dry bag problem, build a plan around it, and then start to look to build our wealth, then what happens is we're actually able to continue to move forward in life regardless of anything happening to us. That's the idea. So be aware of this. Look at the things that might potentially cause holes in my plan. Patch those up first and foremost, have strong armor around it, have a bulletproof plan, and then let's look to build it up. So what I'm first going to talk about in the first half are those potential hindrances. What are some of these roadblocks that might come up? And so how we plan for that is number one, looking at insurance planning. And then number two is having a proper budget in place. And I think you'll find a lot of value in the budget part because it removes a lot of the stress. And it's not the typical type of budgeting that you might be expecting. But let's talk about the insurance planning. What does this mean? This is one of those things that was absolutely not taught to us in school. But we need to recognize and plan for the potential pitfalls that might come across in life. Injury, illness, and death. What are the things that might cause me to have a lot of different expenses? What are the things that might cause me to run out of that water, not have an income coming in? So here are the three main ones. So how I want to build up this example is by using some analogies. I want you to imagine your financial plan, again, it's like you're building a house or a tower. If you make it really, really tall, or you give concern for the nice chandelier inside, or the really nice, beautiful winding staircase, but you build your house on sand, then it didn't matter how nice those things were, because if a rainstorm or a thunderstorm comes along, then everything collapses and the chandelier never mattered in the first place. That's why I need to be concerned about the pillars that are in place first, building it on concrete, so that even if these things happen, my chandelier is still there in place. That's the idea. But very often, what people do with their financial plan is they look to invest or buy their house as soon as possible. And what can happen is if you have no foundation in place, then your whole plan can topple over. So it never mattered how big your investment account was. So instead, the first two steps we want to consider are things like insurance and having a proper emergency fund in place. I won't go into much detail with the emergency fund today, but basically 3 to 6 months of your expenses set aside in a liquid environment. Liquid in the finance world means a place you can access your money quickly, okay? So different high interest savings accounts these days are offering 4% plus right now. Just as an example, if you have $100,000 sitting in a checking account, you're not really making any interest. But if you put it into one of these high interest savings accounts, 4%, gosh, that's $4,000 in a single year. And you just made a simple adjustment, didn't cost you anything, okay? Now, back to the foundational planning. Here are the three things that we need to be aware of. These three things will not just impact you, it'll potentially impact your spouse and your kids if you choose to have these in the future or if you have them already. And so we cannot skip steps. So the three main types of insurance planning that we're going to first focus on is number one, disability, number two, critical illness, or CI for short, and then number three is life insurance. So let's dive into things. Okay, explanation of disability insurance. Imagine you just finished your job. Oh, sorry, you've just finished school, and you go on LinkedIn, you're looking for job postings. You see two job postings that are identical in terms of the work that you're supposed to do, but the pay structure is slightly different. Job A says, oh, thank you. Job A says, we'll pay you $77,500, okay, take home. But if you're not able to go to work, we're going to give you nothing. So if you get sick, if you can't go to work, you get nothing. That's the structure of job A. Job B, on the other hand, says, we'll pay you slightly less at $75,500. But if you're not able to go to work for whatever reason, we'll actually pay you $66,000 tax-free, either until you're better or all the way until retirement at age 65. So just seeing these two options, raise of hands, who would be leaning towards job A and who would lean towards job B? Yeah. And so it's the price difference isn't huge, but then that security net is really the thing that people value. And that's exactly what job B essentially offers. And so this is an explanation, an illustration of how disability insurance works. The idea is if you can't go to work, the risk is no longer on you, but you put it onto the insurance company. And then in order to have this promise in place that they'll pay you a couple $1,000s every month, passively, essentially, without having to go to work, you're just going to be paying into this policy every single month. That's sort of how it works. Okay. With that being said, Jack and the Beanstalk quiz. Get into your groups and really quickly answer me this. Who knows the story of Jack and the Beanstalk? You guys know it? Okay. Most people know the story, but they don't remember. No Googling. Googling. Most people don't remember, why did Jack actually even go up the beanstalk? Most people don't remember that. So discuss with your team really quickly. Write down an answer for me, and I'm just going to go around really quickly just to ask. It'll be recorded and sent out, but not the slides yet. I can send out the slides, actually. That's fine. Why not? Okay. Write down something. Write down something. Remember, prizes are on the line. Okay. Wait, we don't have team names, but whatever. Okay, we'll start with this team here. What'd you rate? Goose? Okay. What's the other team? What was that? Riches? Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Jacob? Is that too vague? Too vague. I'll let Sarah decide. You guys are pretty much spot on, but it was a golden goose and eggs. Yeah. So I don't know. I'll let Sarah decide. So team one got it for sure. We'll say this is team one. And then team two. Is there three teams? Oh, okay. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. So Jack went up to get the golden goose and the golden eggs. Okay. The whole thing with like Jack and the Beanstalk has nothing to do with what I'm about to tell you, but it's just a fun thing I like to ask. But we have in this scenario a golden goose and eggs. Okay. Let's say in this story, these eggs don't lay any more geese. They're just like golden bricks. So if this was the situation, do you want to protect and keep the goose, or do you value the eggs more? Shout it out. Goose. Why is that? It's going to keep laying eggs, right? Okay. So now check this out. This is often like my client's favorite slide. So let's try this. What does this represent? It represents this. The eggs represent things like your house, your car, your vacation, your cottage, your dream home. And the goose actually represents you. So often people insure first their house, their car, their vacations. They don't actually insure the thing that's producing the income, going to work every single day to pay for and save for the house, the car, the vacation, and so on. And so it's backwards right now. If we're only insuring the assets and not our income, then something happens to our income, then we'll never be able to have another house, car, vacation. So it's actually backwards right now. We should actually prioritize the goose. That's the illustration when it comes to disability insurance. So once again, what's happening is you're protecting your income. If anything happens to you, then you have a monthly paycheck coming in from the insurance company to continue to pay for the different expenses that you have and save for the different goals you have. That's the idea. Okay, let's move on to the next type of insurance. So that's disability insurance. This one here is critical illness insurance. This one was made by a heart surgeon in South Africa. His name is Dr. Bernard. And so what he noticed was more and more people were going into the hospitals because of major illnesses, critical illnesses, things like heart attack, stroke, cancer, cabbage, and so on. And so what he noticed was even though these people are getting sick, because medicine and technology is getting so good, he's able to get them out of the hospital. He's able to heal them medically. But the problem was he noticed that the cost of these services never went down. In fact, they kept going up. And so people were being saved medically, but they were dying financially. So that was the gap he noticed in the hospitals. So he actually went to the insurance companies and he told them, this is what's happening right now in the world. You guys need to figure out a solution for this. And so he designed an insurance product. And how it works is if you get diagnosed with one of 26 different illnesses, such as heart attack, stroke, and cancer, then a lump sum amount of money comes into your pocket, and then you can use it to pay for various expenses. So that's sort of the idea. Now, what do people typically use this money for? Paying for different medical equipment, emergency medication, childcare, and so on. And this is the big one. Let's say if mom is sick, well, if mom is sick, who gets money? It's not actually going to be me, but very often I'm going to be the one who needs to take mom to the hospital if spouse is sick and so on. If I'm the one who's sick, then my loved ones need to take time away from work. That affects their income and their savings. And these savings were meant for other goals. So then what we can do is we can have that lump sum amount of money come to the person that is sick, and then they can share it with their loved ones so that financially it's not a burden and they can worry just about getting better. That's the idea. And for this next reason, very often people get it just for this point. We never expect anything to happen to us. And we never hope for anything to happen to us. And so if nothing does, and we make it through our life without ever getting an illness, then every single dollar you put into this plan will actually be given to you. And so it's almost like a forced savings account. You can view it that way. So it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to get to Hawaii. There's these potential different risks along the way. If I don't have this plan in place, then I might drown. But if I do have this plan in place, I still make it to the other side and I get the money back either way. That's the idea. And so what if you have no coverage in place right now? What does it potentially look like? Well, it means a couple different things. Number one is your first option is you'd have to sell the savings that you have right now. The downside of this is this. Your savings were meant for other important goals, whether it's for buying your first house, retirement, and so on. So if that's the case, we're not able to actually achieve those goals. So maybe that's not the best use of our money. You might even have to potentially downsize your home. Number two option really is to go into debt. The problem with debt is that it's so easy to get into, but it can feel impossible to get out of. So maybe that's not the best option, right? And then potentially you may have to retire late or never retire at all, okay? And I like to ask my clients often this. When I work with young professionals, they tell me, you know, it's a real concern. You know, I'm like 25, 35 today. I don't think this is going to happen to me. So I often ask them this, and this is a question for you all. Get into your teams. What do you think the odds are of an average Canadian getting diagnosed with cancer?
All my chance pretty smart to do right away.
Oh, really?
They're all hitting them.
I guess I've seen this before, maybe too. Okay. Write it down, and then let's hear it. 1 and 2. 40%. You guys are pretty much spot on. We'll give them both a point. It's 45, so that's why we're giving them both points. So it's about a 1 in 2 chance, guys. This is a heavy topic. It's not my favorite thing to talk about, but this is real financial planning, to be honest with you. So statistically speaking, that's like this side of the room, statistically speaking, right? And so if that's the case, it's this side or this side, do you have a plan in place to cover these costs? I work with a number of people in healthcare. That's sort of my niche. And they know this better than I do. They first off see more people coming into the hospitals that had no health history concerns about them getting a critical illness. Along with this, they see what it's really like, and they sort of describe it to me as well. I work with a number of SLPs, and they even walk me through what an average stroke patient might be going through. So they'll tell me, first off, they'll come in to the hospital, they go into acute care, and they'll be treated first and foremost. And then if more care is needed, then they'll go into inpatient rehab, they'll stay in the hospital. Very often, I'll talk to these SLPs, and I'll ask them, what's it like when they're in there? And they'll tell me, you know what? Very often, they have a chance of getting better, but the problem is there's so many people getting strokes that unfortunately, they have to be discharged and moved to the next place. And so it's like, there's certain illnesses where technically they're well enough to also go to work, so disability insurance doesn't kick in, they just can't talk, right? But there's a chance that they can get better. So she'll often fight with her supervisor to try to convince them to just keep them in there a little bit longer. But unfortunately, the reality is as much as they want to, that's just MSP at the moment where just staff are overworked and there's not enough facilities. And so then what's this person left with for options is private care. Private care wise, what can we do? $5,000 a month, hire somebody on the personal side. That's not cheap. Where does that money come from? Savings, debt, depending on somebody else. Those three options we talked about are not ideal. What if you had $100,000 come into your pocket today? That'd be great. What if you had $100,000 come into your pocket after you had a stroke? That means everything. It means options at the end of the day. And so that's what this does. The other thing people often tell me as well is like, well, if I'm healthy, I'll get better. That's exactly the point, right? It's like if you were to pass away from all this, then life insurance is the thing that you need. But very often, healthy people are the ones here that get better. So it's the healthy people that actually should be getting the critical illness insurance because you actually need the money to actually get better. So that's the idea. And this is, again, like not really my favorite thing to talk about, but I just never want a conversation with somebody, especially that I know personally. Let's say 10 years down the line and they are struck with something and they just ask me, like, why didn't you tell me about these options when we could have planned for them? Instead I want to hear, hey, you know what, this sucks right now, but financially we're going to be okay. We're going to worry about getting better and we're going to be back on our feet. That's ideally the situation I want to hear. And I just never want to see anybody have to depend on strangers on the internet for money. Type in Vancouver GoFundMe cancer. You'll see pages on pages, right? So that's essentially it with this. And so the plan is only as strong as your weakest link. And if your plan is this, I hope this doesn't happen to me, then hope is not the best plan. And so that's why we set up these insurance plans. Now let's go into a little bit about why we get this early. You might be thinking, I will get hit with cancer probably later in my life. Why do I get it in my 20s and 30s? It's because you don't get insurance just because you have the money for it. This is really important, actually. You don't get insurance because you have the ability to pay for it. You get it with your health. So let me explain. In order for you to qualify, so there's an eligibility test, insurance companies will ask you a number of questions on your life, your lifestyle, your health, your family's health, all these different things. And they'll actually assess whether or not you're going to claim. And so if you're too high of a risk, they'll either decline you entirely or they'll triple the price on you. They'll exclude certain conditions. So that's the problem. And then also in terms of pricing, it's based on your health and your age, and you're never younger and healthier than you are today. In terms of a real story, for those of you who have heard my workshops for the last couple of years now, you know this one quite well. Two couples, so 4 people, late 20s and early 30s, looking to buy a home. They speak with their mortgage person. Mortgage person says, you're good to go, but have you considered if one of you is not able to pay for this mortgage because you get sick or hurt or something happens to you, what's your plan? Oh, shoot, haven't thought about it. Talk to my friend. Referred over to me, and I created a plan for them. They love it. Let's apply. There's no promises that you can get it. All 4 of them, late 20s, early 30s, declines. And they just came to me asking, well, what the heck, right? And they were upset. What were we supposed to do? I just told them, honestly, really the only thing you could have done is apply sooner when you were younger and healthier. That's really it. And they just said, well, like, how are we supposed to know this? And I guess that's the reality of why people like myself have this sort of a profession. And so they just told me every time you're in front of someone who's under 35, you need to tell them about us. So I was like, sure, that's going to be my promise to you. And I was really contemplating for a while if I wanted to share this next point. Typically, I only share it with close friends and clients. But I'm a pretty young person. I look pretty young and I look pretty healthy. But actually, I myself, I've been declined for insurance. And I've been declined twice. And so, yeah, you guys, like, if there's anything I want to tell you, it's like, get it while you can, right? I'm not even concerned about you claiming on something right now. I'm concerned about whether or not you'll even be able to have the coverage in place when you want it later, when you have a kid. You know what I mean? We're not even talking about the financial side of, oh, it's going to be more expensive later. I don't care about that. I care about, can I ever get it at all? And so even for someone like myself, like this happened to me. And so that's the other thing I wanted to share. Now let's move on to life insurance. Almost done the insurance portion here. Life insurance, how it works is it pays out a lump sum tax-free amount of money if you pass away. So you never actually see this money. And it's really a selfless gift that you give to your loved ones. This is the question I ask my clients. And so you're going to be going through this process as if you were my client. If you passed away yesterday, is anybody financially impacted? Does anybody depend on you financially? If the answer is yes, you probably darn need life insurance, straight up. If the answer is no, well, then let's take a look at it. Here are things to consider, the costs that come up that may need to be covered at death. Number 1 is funeral expenses. Very often people don't realize, but the cost of funerals, we're looking at like 10K minimum. We typically budget about $25,000. So let's make sure we have money for that. Then any debt, if you don't want any debt to have to come out of your estate, out of the savings that you have, then we can cover those. Now, mortgage, if you have a mortgage, let's say there's two people paying for a mortgage, one person is no longer able to pay because they pass away, then the mortgage bill doubles for the survivor. So it'd be a lot better if we can just eliminate that mortgage completely. And then family legacy. This is the one where the conversation goes from, I don't need life insurance to, well, let me explain to you a couple of things that my young professionals consider that make them decide, maybe I want life insurance. So again, I'm going to repeat, this is not a need conversation, but the money that we have allows us to live out our values. Based on what's important to you, you're able to amplify that. So let's take a look and see what I mean by this. So when you pass away, I often sit down with my clients and I tell them, when you pass away, it'll be the worst day of your loved ones' lives. But what if I told you it could actually be one of the most transformative days for them as well? And you might be thinking, what do you mean? You know, like, what does that mean? And the reason why is because you can leave behind a life-changing amount of money for them through planning ahead of time. And so they ask for me for examples. And I'll tell them, I'll ask them, you know, while you were growing up, maybe, are there family members that come to mind that you'd like to leave a significant legacy for? What comes to mind? And so sometimes my clients will tell me this. I'll be working with a nurse not too long ago, for example. And this is a really common conversation to have. And they'll tell me, you know what, I have a younger sister. And growing up, we used to always talk about what my dream wedding would look like. And you know, we'll describe like, oh, you know, I want my venue this way, the decor this way. These are the people I'll invite. It's going to be looking this way. Man, that's actually kind of expensive. It's like 50,000 for like 250 plus people. We'll deal with it one day. But then I ask, you know, if you're no longer able to be there because something unfortunate, unexpected happens and you're no longer able to join her, like what would you ideally like to leave behind? What if you could actually leave behind a gift? And then she just says like, oh, tell me more about this. And so you can almost imagine if we're at your funeral and your sister is there, what if somebody is able to come up to her and give her this envelope? And in this envelope is a letter that reads something like, you know, dear sister, this is your older sister. I'm so sorry I'm not able to be there for you right now and to celebrate your eventual big, exciting wedding one day. Whoever could have seen this coming? But you know what? I remember us always talking about how much of a wonderful wedding you wanted to have. And so I wanted to leave you this gift. Have the best party ever. You know, your sister loves you so much. And here's $50,000 that you can use for your wedding. And then, so that would be the envelope that could be given along with the $50,000 check. People often have different things that they want to leave money behind for. So for example, maybe a wedding and a down payment. For parents, sometimes I am told that, you know what, I would love to leave behind like $1 million for my parents to retire early. Or my brother, he always wanted this dream car and a down payment. And so then all of a sudden, you don't need these things. But if you had the option to leave behind this money for a specific reason that's relevant to you, then what could that look like? So that's where the life insurance conversation comes in. So I want you to view it almost like you go into the mall and you see a really nice jacket. You were never expecting to get anything that day, but you see this really nice jacket. You're like, oh, it looks really good. So you decide to just try it on and try it on. And you're like, whoa, like I look good. And so you're thinking, well, let me just see how much it costs. And you look at the price tag, then it's up to you to decide if the jacket is worth it. So then if you could leave behind $1 million in the form of life insurance, is it worth the cost? That's the question that we're asking ourselves now. And so I often ask my clients this. Well, first of all, how much is car insurance? I'm like, what do you guys think? Just throw out a number per month. Sometimes up to 400, yeah. But usually I would say about $200 a month. Would we agree with that? Yeah, around 200. And is a car appreciating or depreciating asset? Does it go up in value or down in value? Yeah, it depreciates every year. So we're insuring a depreciating asset for $200 a month. And that's just expected. What about our lives? So in terms of as the years go on, do you typically make more money or less money? You make more money. And so then how much is it to insure this appreciating asset? I'm going to ask you guys just to take a guess. Throw out a number there for me. So go into your teams. How much would it cost for a 27-year-old female, let's say, to get $1 million of life insurance? Take a guess. Term, the cheaper option. The most cost-effective option. The most cost-effective. Cost-effective. Yeah. Okay, let's write something down. Write something down. And let's start in the back this time. Team 2, what do you think? Third number.
Per month?
Yeah, per month.
140.
140, what do we think? Yeah, okay, let's take a look. So for age 27, female, no tobacco, $1 million, 24 right now with Desjardins. So there's your number, $24 a month. That's not per, yeah, the 270 is per year, so 24. And so I just tell my clients, you know what, you just took a look at the jacket, the price tag, it's up to you to decide. But now at least you know your options that exist. What's important to you, you can live out your values better now that you are just educated with a better understanding of your options. Okay, let's keep moving on here. Oh, where's my mouse? Thank you. Sweet. Okay, now the actual practical stuff. How do you get started? What are things to consider? Number one is find an unbiased broker. So find someone who doesn't particularly work with one company only, because then they may be biased to that one company, but find someone who's able to shop around for you for the best rates and policies. In terms of discounts for disability insurance, there's a list of professions I'll show you in a second. Plus, if you graduated from a particular study within a certain time frame, you can lock in a up to 30% lifetime discount. There's also special programs that you get discounts or giveaways like Apple Watches. If you exercise a certain amount, you have certain certifications and vaccines. And then if you apply as a couple, particular companies will often give you an additional discount. And then get it in bulk. This one, a lot of advisors actually don't even know. But let's say someone comes up to you and they tell you, hey, you need like $233,000 of life insurance. Apply for $250,000. The reason why is it's like Costco. If you get it in bulk, it's actually less expensive than if you get the smaller amount. So this was actually recent, not too long ago, where somebody applied for a smaller number, kind of in between, but you want to go into the bands. You want to get into the bulk amounts, and it's actually less expensive. So hopefully that's helpful in getting started with it. Here's the grad program. You can take a picture of this if you'd like. If you've graduated 1 year before or after any of these studies, then you can lock in up to a 30% lifetime discount. If you've already graduated far past that, then if you're on any of these professions and a few others like RMT, for example, there's still additional available discounts for particular carriers. So just know about those options. For myself, I work particularly with self-employed healthcare professional. That's sort of my specialty. So RMTs, physios, physicians, RNs, and SLPs. So you'll see some of those on this list. And then I used to work with a ton of comp sci coding people. Not so much anymore, but still down to help you guys out. But those are sort of like my niches that I'm most familiar with. So there we are. Let's keep moving along. Oh, sorry. There we go. Red flags, things to be aware of. Life insurance, a non-cancelable plan versus a cancelable plan. So when we apply as a young and healthy person, and I'm a non-smoker, I don't like go helicopter skiing, or I don't do drugs and any of this stuff, then even when I turn 45 and I don't know, I have a change in lifestyle and I'm doing all these crazy things in bungee jumping, I'm still deemed to be a young and healthy 20-year-old, not a smoking 45-year-old. So it's locked in if it's a non-cancelable plan. That's what that means. So in your insurance program, you want to make sure you see those words instead of cancelable, where they can change it on you. Then we want to avoid something called post-claim underwriting. This was such a problem that CBC Marketplace actually made a video on it. So you can Google in denial CBC Marketplace and you'll see a 20-minute video on this. I'll summarize it in the next 20 seconds. Essentially, people wanted to get insurance for their mortgage. They bought a house and this couple would say, if one of us passes away, the other person wants to still live in there, so the mortgage needs to be paid off. But the programs that they were being signed up for were post-claim underwriting. What this means is that eligibility test I was talking about in the beginning, that test, that assessment would happen after death. So these families would be paying into life insurance the whole time, but they never qualified to begin with. And then after death, they would check their history and their health and all these sort of things and be like, oh, you guys don't qualify, no payout. So instead, we need to have this underwriting, this eligibility test beforehand. Once it's locked in, they can't change it because it's a non-cancelable plan. Disability insurance, you want to avoid, ideally, any occupation definition. Your employee health plan will have a 200-page booklet, your employee benefits booklet. Look for LTD, long-term disability, and look for the definition. If it says any occupation, that's not the best strength of a definition. What it means is this. It means if you're technically able to do any job that's out there under reasonable education and training, we're actually not going to pay you. So you have to be in a pretty bad state to be able to actually claim. Otherwise, they're not going to pay you, even if you technically can't do your own job right now, as long as you're able to do any other job that's out there. It's a really weak definition. Instead, I want to see own occupation. As long as you can't do the duties of your own job, you will get paid. So own OC versus any OC. Also, I want to avoid a taxable benefit. The reason why we do this is because if you're supposed to get $10,000 a month in insurance benefits, but you're getting taxed, that's $120,000 income. Your tax rate's going to be like 30% plus, so that 10,000 is not really 10,000. Yeah, so you're not going to have enough money. So here's a summary. Okay, that's a lot of information. It took a while, but hopefully that helps you just understand building the base of your boat. So here's a nice chart for us. Disability insurance, what is it? Why do you need to consider? It replaces your monthly income. We always talk about passive income coming in, right? If I can't go to work, then how can I design my plan so I have money coming in to fit my needs? Why do I need it? Protect the goose, not just the eggs. And consider mixing and matching an employer and a private plan. So very often what I'll see is I'll see an employer plan that covers for 2 years. After 2 years, what happens? So you can get a personal plan to top up after that. Critical illness insurance. You get a lump sum amount of money that you can use for whatever you need. Another example of this might be you have a rare form of brain cancer, but the best surgeon happens to be in Germany. You can fly out there instantly because you have the money and the means to do so. The money gives you options. You can protect your savings. Normally, this was supposed to be for my home purchase, for retirement. Now I can actually still use these funds for retirement and home purchase. Consider covering enough for your spouse's and your partner's income, and you get 100% of your money back if you never claim. Life insurance, you get a lump sum amount for your loved ones, so it's not for you, it's for your loved ones. You can use this to pay off your debts and expenses and have a life-changing amount of money go to your loved ones. And then there's two types. There's a term and permanent. I won't go into that right now, but later on I'll explain. So you take a picture. Perfect. All righty. So that's done for the insurance side of things. Now let's talk about budgeting here. When I talk about budgeting with my clients, I want to hit these three things. I want to create a budgeting plan so that you don't need to track every single month. That's often the biggest headache. You don't feel constrained, and it's an effortless system. It's just like, it works itself out, okay? So how does this work? I need all my clients to be able to actually master this, what I'm about to show you, in order for me to even help you begin at all. So imagine this. Oh, real quick, the reason we budget is because you want to tell your money where to go rather than wondering where your money went. Very often, I'll have like people that make crap ton of money, like 10 grand a month, but then they have nothing to show for it. And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, you know what? I don't know, man. Like, I have all this coming in, but I don't know where it goes. So let's solve that issue. So this is how we're going to do it. Imagine we have two people with the exact same job, exact same income. Person A, as soon as their income comes in, they will spend first. They'll spend on things that are important for them, groceries and rent and all these different bills. But then maybe they'll spend on things that are a little less important and unnecessary. And that might cause them to spend more than they anticipated that month, right? So they might even spend more than this line here. And then they save what's left over, okay? The problem with this strategy is two things. So number one is it might cause you to overspend. We're very good at justifying for ourselves. Oh, my birthday's coming up in like 3.5 months, early birthday present. Oh, shoot, 70% sale on socks. I don't need socks, but like I just got a pair of socks yesterday, but 70%, oh, that's how they get you. The other problem is it might make you feel constrained. If you don't know how much you're supposed to save each month or how much you reasonably can based off your lifestyle, then you might be like, should I spend this $5 on bubble tea today or not? Oh, you know what, I won't. And then like that could have been like the best bubble tea of your life. Who knows, right? So it goes both ways. Person B, on the other hand, does something different. It's very simple. As soon as they get paid, they'll take a portion of their income and then they'll set it aside to a different place. You won't spend money you won't see. So they have this system in place and it's automated. Then they spend what's left over. The reason this is so powerful is because now they have forced savings that allows them to have money for the different goals they have in mind. If I don't see a certain amount of cash flow, so savings at the end of each month, there's nothing I can really do for you. So I need to help you designate this number and then have certain amounts going towards different goals. You'll see on this list here, some of these are shorter term goals, some of these are medium term goals, and some of them are longer term goals. So the way we save for a short, medium, and long-term goals should look very different, okay? So now the job is, okay, well, we understand the concept. How do we implement it? I need to understand how much this amount is supposed to be. I'm going to show you how to determine that right now. So what we do is we do need to at least one time look at the different categories of spending and write down an ideal lifestyle for some of these. Some of these, it's not a choice. You pay a certain amount for rent already. You pay a certain amount for car insurance already. It's like, that's set. But some of these, you can choose for yourself. You know what? I think eating out 3 days a week would be ideal and spending this much per every time I go out. You add that up, write that in the eating out category. Then I want you to look at how much you actually spend. Look at your credit card, debit card bills, and write down and compare it, your ideal versus your actual. You might be surprised, like, oh, I actually spend a lot more than I thought. So then find a balance between the two and set a realistic goal. Once you set this realistic goal, I need to see a certain amount going to savings every single month. If you're not sure how much, ideally around 20%, you can follow this baseline rule, 50-20-30 rule, or 50-30-20 rule. 50 towards needs, 30 towards wants, 20 towards savings. Something like that to get started. But I need to see a certain number, that top part, and make it disappear. So what does this really look like in practice? And then automated 20. So as soon as you get paid, that 20% disappears into a different account, okay? So let's say you earn $4,000 a month take home. This is like an average person. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So 50% towards the must-haves, $2,000 a month towards groceries and rent and so on, $1,200 towards the luxurious items, and then something like 20% towards the TFSA, RSP, and so on. And then with this 20%, this $800 a month, we're going to be allocating it towards medium-term, long-term goals. It should look different. And I'll show you how we use different accounts to make sure it's allocated properly. Okay. Let's take a quick 5-minute break there. Fire away any questions. This should be the same Slido. And then also, Jacob, let's get the other poll set up in just a second. But what we're about to dive into after this break is we're then going to look at how do we grow our wealth. So how do we reduce our tax bill? That's probably going to be the most helpful thing, to be honest. Basics and advanced level investing. So how do you structure your portfolio in such a way and then even take it to the next level if you're already investing? And then estate planning. How do you structure your assets today so that it allows it to be tax efficient later on and passed down to other generations without having to pay too much tax? So take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back at 6. And then Jacob, when you have a chance, can you put up the, yeah.
Most useful part one.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. You can mute me. Read it out to me and then I'll repeat it.
Yep, it's a question from Gabriel that says, how do we find an unbiased broker?
Okay.
For trades?
Okay.
The question.
Sure. Okay, so let's get started again. A few questions, so I'll answer these quickly and then we can get on to the tax planning side of things. The question was, how do we find an unbiased broker? I would say the main thing that you want to look for is look for someone who has a heart of a teacher. So sorry. Look for someone who has a heart of a teacher, who's willing to explain and break things down for you. There's a lot of dignity and choice. And so personal finances are very personal. You want to have someone who understands your situation. And that way they can really take you from point A to point B and understand the steps that you're supposed to take. And everyone's sort of in that unique situation. Someone who's willing to understand your situation and really teach you, hey, this is why I'm seeing, these recommendations this way. Does it make sense to you as well? Rather than just trusting someone because it sounds good. So that would be my main piece of advice. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Okay, sweet. Let's keep going then. Alrighty. The fun stuff. This is the reason you probably came. How do I decrease my tax bill and so on? So let's dive into things. Boom. Let's talk about tax planning. So now we're finally up on the growing your house. Oh, sorry. There we go. So I mentioned this in the beginning, but it's such a great quote. I'll say it again. Wealth is not measured based on how much you make, but based on what you keep. And so again, there's two ways for us to keep more of our money. Number one is spending less, but that's no fun. So number two is by spending less on taxes. So how can we go about doing this? All right, get back into groups. Quiz question. In 2023, what was the highest combined BC and federal tax bracket? Discuss with the team. Ontario people, by the way, it's very darn similar. So this applies to you too. Is it 30%, 53.5, or 45.5? Discuss with your team, write out a number, and let me know what you think. What's the highest tax bracket? So if you earn $300,000, what's your tax rate? Yeah. What do we think? More than half?
No, I think so.
Just under half? 30%? All right, what do we think? Let's go to team 2. B. Team 1. C. The answer is B.
Oh.
53.5. Oh gosh, this is why I have a job. All right, so let's talk about it. So here we go, okay? So just to help you understand how tax brackets work in Canada, sort of like this ladder system, we have different brackets. So for the first 15 grand that you earn, you actually don't pay any tax at all. But then for the next 15 to 45, you can see here, then you pay 20.06%. But then if you earn a little bit more than that, let's say at 45 to 53, it's not that 22% is on everything below. It's only whatever is in between this amount. And then you still only pay 20% on that amount. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's just say I often get this question. I earn 106 right now, but my employer is offering to give me a raise to like 110. Should I take it? Like I probably shouldn't take it, right? Because I don't want to go from 32 to 38% tax rate. It's like, no, take it every time, because the 106 that you earn right now still is only going to be, or sorry, the let's say like up to the 106, that's still only going to be taxed at the 32. Anything above that will be taxed at 38. So it's not the whole income. Yeah, these are how the tax rates work. And so if you earn more than about $250,000 250 or so, 240, you'll get taxed at the highest rate. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, you got it? Okay, thanks, Jacob. All right, sweet. Another quiz question. Anybody here self-employed? Oh, good number of us. Okay, sweet. So if you run a corporation, then the corporation gets taxed. What is the tax rate for corporations? Is it 11%, higher at 61, or 27? Get to your groups and let me know really quickly. What do you think? Business owners? Business owners? What do we think? Are people online guessing too? I don't know. Oh, really? What are we saying? Let's see.
Not for this one. Not for this one.
I see. Write down a number. Let's keep going. What do we think? Team 2, what do we think? A, 11%. B, or sorry, team 2, what do we think? A, you guys are absolutely correct. It is 11%. Boom. All right. So just here's the illustration. So if you are a sole proprietor, let's say, or you're an employee, and you earn $240,000, a lot of money, well, your tax rate is 53.5. But if you incorporate, set up this other legal entity, and your corporation makes the money, then the corporation will only pay 11% or 11% for the first 500 grand. But then if you earn anything above 500 grand, then it increases to 27%, which is still like pretty sweet. Yeah. So for my business owners, that's a different beast of planning on its own, but that's sort of one of the areas that we help people in. How do we make sure that you still maintain that 11% while maintaining the highest income possible? So there we are. Let's keep it going here. Okay, so half of you are like, well, I'm not a business owner, so what can I do to decrease my tax bill if I can't incorporate? There's two main things we can do. Look for A, tax deductions, and then B, tax credits. I'll explain tax credits in a second, but let's explain what tax deductions are. Let's say I have a $100,000 salary. And just for easy math, these aren't accurate, but for easy math, 30% tax rate, average tax rate. If that's the case, I pay $30,000 in taxes. But let's say I contribute $20,000 to my RRSPs. One of the most common ways you can get a tax deduction is by contributing to your RRSPs. What an RRSP is, it's just an account that you put money inside of. Think of it like a savings account, or like a cup. And then as soon as I put water inside of this cup, well, then I get something called a tax deduction. Once the water is inside of this cup, once the money is inside of this cup, then I can look to invest it in stocks or bonds, index funds, and so on. But we're not talking about that right now. The point is RRSPs, registered retirement savings plans, they're just an account. That's the main thing. When the money hits this, what happens is this. I get to subtract my taxable income. Oh, shoot. Maybe it's the TV. Oh. Hopefully online can still see it.
Yeah, online is still on.
Okay. Maybe go back for me. Oh, it's still there though. Oh, okay, strange.
Good.
Oh, okay. So what happens is I get to decrease my taxable income based on the contribution I make. So that's what a tax deduction is. It's a decrease in your taxable income. Okay. So because I now only earn $80,000 in the eyes of the government, I have a lower tax rate because I earn less income. So that's what happens. So if you do the math, it's like 16,000 on taxes owed compared to the 30. So it's like almost a half cut in taxes owed. So that's how I can decrease my tax bill using tax deductions. And there's different ways I can do that. But first, let's go off to the tax credits. Tax credits are like coupons against the taxes you already owe. So let's say at the end of the year, I owe $10,000 in taxes. If I have tax credits of $2,000, I get to just shave off $2,000 off of my taxes owed. So I take the $10,000 of taxes owed minus $2,000, I only pay $8,000 in taxes. That's what a tax credit is. Some common ones go into tuition. So if you paid for school to courses, then you can actually take those expenses that you had, and those are actually eligible tax credits. Number two is medical expenses. Let's say I went to physio and I have no health insurance and I paid all these costs, and you might be thinking, oh, this was so expensive. Well, actually, a portion of this can be a tax credit to reduce your tax bill. And then number three, charitable donations. This is probably the most powerful tax credit, and you can actually carry it forward as well, up to 5 years. How this one works is when you make a donation to a registered charity, you can just Google Registered Charity Canada. There's a long list of all the charities. Then a portion of your donation actually comes back to you in the form of a tax refund because it's a tax credit. Don't quote me on this, but it's something like 15% for the first $200 and then 29% for every dollar above that, up to like 75% of your income. That's for BC. I don't remember Ontario's off the top of my head. But so yeah, that's pretty sweet. It's like not all your money that you put to donations is just gone. You actually get some money back. That's pretty sweet. Tax deductions. So this reduces your taxable income, which brings your tax bracket down. So that's really powerful. We actually prefer tax deductions more than tax credits. Number one is RSP contributions. As soon as you make a contribution into that account, so you open an RSP with a bank or a private wealth manager or DIY place like Questrade or Wealthsimple, put money in, you get a tax deduction based on every dollar you put in. Moving expenses. Something like if you move 40 kilometers closer to work, then the expenses you paid for moving can actually be a deduction. Health spending account. So let's say I'm a business owner and I don't want to set up a health insurance plan because they're very expensive. but my employees need health insurance, then what you can do, or this applies to yourself as the business owner as well, if you pay for different dental bills, physio bills, and so on, the business with the cheaper 11% dollars, right, they can actually reimburse you. And those reimbursement dollars to the employee or yourself is actually a tax deduction. So that's pretty sweet. Employment expenses. For a lot of people, COVID hit, had to work from home. Depending on your contract of how things are set up at work, this applies for employees as well. If you're paying rent, if you have a home office setup, you have to pay for office expenses, even like utilities like heating and water, these sort of things can be tax deductions. It's listed in the T200. Talk to your employer about it, and then they can walk you through it if they haven't already. But yeah, those expenses you can use to actually decrease your taxable income. And then business expenses. Oh, also, for example, a lot of like nurses and whatnot, they have like professional dues and union dues. All those are tax deductible as well. Usually it's already done for you in your T4, but sometimes they aren't. So claim your tax deductions that you're rightfully entitled to. Business expenses, T2125. This is for self-employed only. The idea is if you have to spend money to make money for your business, whatever you spent can be used to reduce your taxes owed. I have this slide here. Boom, that goes over this. So there's a lot of things going on, but let me walk you through it. There's a test called REOP for my business owners. It's a reasonable expectation of profit test. So whatever is spent on, there needs to be a reasonable expectation that this helped me generate money for my business. And so here are some of the common ones. And this is all listed in that form, okay? Any sort of costs of goods sold, contracts, raw materials, anything I have to pay for these sort of things, advertising, meals and expenses actually count as well. Those can be used to deduct. Some common ones are office expenses, travel, and certain assets as well that depreciate over time. That depreciation actually does a calculation for it for you to include as a tax deduction, and you can write off things like a car or even camera, for example. Alrighty, so now we talked about how tax impacts our income, but anytime you make money in Canada, you get taxed. That includes our investments. So we want to talk about, well, how does tax impact our investments, and how can I reduce that tax bill for our investments as well? So here's another question. Get into your groups. If $1 repeats 20 times and doubles each time, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on, does that 20 times? How much is left at the 20th time? 500,000, 1 million, or 20? Take a guess. Get with your groups and write it down. Yeah. Just read them off right now.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on deducting living expenses? The upper one, like,
Yep.
This one is, when can we draw from our SP account? Are we for the drawing early? See what times are now.
Yep.
And last one is what income does it make sense to incorporate that?
I'll answer these all at the, or actually I'll answer them super quick. At maybe next break. Next break I'll answer them. Yeah. Okay, what do we think? Team 1, what do we think? You right? A, okay. What do we think? B, answer is B. Give a point to team 2. So it's 1 million. Let's take a look at the illustration. 1, 2, 4, 8, you can see here, 500 to 1 million. Power of compound interest. It's kind of like a snowball rolling down a hill. It collects snow and then collects snow on top of that and then collects snow on top of that. So that's the power of it compounding. Here's a fun question though. What if it was taxed 25% each time? So it doesn't go from 1 to 2, but there's a 25% tax. So it turns into 175. And then I don't know. I'm not that good at math. What do we think? Quick discussion with your groups and let me know what you think. $72,000, $750,000, $250,000. All right, write it down. Team 2, what do we think? A, team 2, or 1. C? Let's go. So that's kind of scary. Yeah, it's unfortunate. You can see here, right? The impact of tax on your investments. It's like a $976,000 difference. So that's not great. I want to keep my money and the growth of my money in my pocket. How do I do that? Well, there's 2 types of accounts that we need to understand. Tax-free and tax-deferred. Let's take a look at this. Tax-free means a gross tax-free. So anytime my money makes more money, I don't pay tax on it. And then I can take it out tax-free as well. I don't pay tax when I sell it. Tax deferred means as my investments, my money grows, I don't pay tax on it. But when I want it later to spend it, that's when I pay tax on it. You defer that tax bill. But a dollar deferred is a dollar saved. So that's pretty sweet. Here are the first 6 months that everyone can do. Personally, you can do it. So even if you're not a business owner. Principal residence is the home you live in. TFSA is probably the most popular account. RRSP we talked about. First home savings account. This came into effect April 2023, newer account. RESP and then RDSP. Everybody here in this room can do that. Now we also have accounts available for personal and for business owners. There's something called a corporate class fund. Basically what this one does is it focuses on capital gains so that it avoids any income or dividends that are spit out. So as your investments grow in a non-registered environment, you typically would pay tax on the growth, but this tries to defer that tax bill by making the investments focused on capital gains. And then the participating life insurance. So there's a particular type of life insurance that allows you to participate with the success of investment companies and insurance companies. And so there's actually like an investment built inside of this guy. And then this will grow tax-free and you can access the money tax-free as well. People often use it for both personal and corporate as sort of an added benefit to their retirement savings. Let's keep going. So how do these accounts work? Let me first off explain to you what a registered account is, and then explain to you the taxes on investments. Then I'll show you how a TFSA and RSP help reduce that tax bill. So a registered account is essentially the special account the CRA created, and it's registered or recognized by the government to have special tax advantages. The government wanted to incentivize Canadians to save more money, so they created these accounts. If you don't use these accounts, it's called a non-registered account. How it works is this. If you invest, let's say, $1 into some sort of investment and it grows. As it grows, you pay tax. Oh, sorry. And then, oh, there you go. And then when you want to sell this investment, it then gets taxed again. So in other words, really simply put, if my investments grow, I don't keep all the gains. Kind of like the illustration before. The TFSA is a little bit different. As my investments grow, so again, I put my money into this cup. It's just an account that holds my money. Then I need to invest in something. I invest in an index fund or something like that. It grows from like $1 to $10. As it grows, I don't pay any tax. Then I want to spend this $10. I can take all of it out to spend on whatever I need. So in other words, if my investments grow, I don't pay any tax. Tax-free. The RRSP, so we talked about this before. It gives you that tax deduction when you put money in. And then the money then is in the account. I can invest again in that index fund or some sort of investment. Grows from $1 to $10. I don't pay tax, but when I want to take that money out, that's when I pay tax on it. Taxable withdrawal. Typically how people use it is they use it for the long term. They put money in when their income is high. So they have a high tax bracket, let's say 40%. And then when they want to take their money out, they take it out during retirement when their tax bracket is lower, let's say 25%. So instead of being taxed at 40%, you're taxed at 25%. That's a typical strategy of the RSP. Later on, I'll discuss how this can be used for buying your home as well, though. There's a new account called the FHSA, First Home Savings Account. I like this picture because it shows a combination of how the TFSA and RSP, it's kind of like, the FHSA is like a combination of the two. It's like the best of both worlds, like Hannah Montana, if you guys know what that is. So the idea here is when you put money into the FHSA, you get a tax deduction. So you get to decrease your tax rate, you get a tax refund. Then it grows tax-free. But then unlike the RSP, you can actually take it out tax-free for your first home purchase. This only applies if you haven't owned a home for the last 4 calendar years. You can put up to $8,000 in per year, up to a lifetime amount of $40,000. So it's kind of like you put $8,000 in for the next 5 years, and then you rack this up. You get a tax deduction every time. That's the idea. One important tip, if you want to write this down, let's say I want to put in enough for me to catch up on the contributions that I missed. So it's like, well, I didn't put in $8,000 in last year, right? So can I put in, $8,000 for last year and $8,000 for this year? You only can catch up for 1 year's missed of room. So only $16,000 at a time. And the only way you can do this is if you opened an account last year. Otherwise, the contribution room never gets created. So if you haven't done that yet, at least open the account this year. And then if you don't put anything in this year, then in 2025, you can put in $16,000 for the 2024 and 2025 contributions. So hopefully that made sense. The point is just at least open a FHSA. For the most part, young people should be using it. If you don't end up even buying a house, this goes to your RSP tax-free anyways. So for the most part, young people should be using it unless you have a direct need for money in the shorter term. All right, here's a case study. How many of you want to buy your first home? Okay, this will be helpful. This is how we can use these accounts to buy your first home. And you're gonna make more money by following these steps. Let's say we have Sally, who's an RMT and earns $120,000 income. This is sort of like my typical client that comes to me. So RMT is a registered massage therapist, by the way. So let's say Sally uses her RRSP. The reason why she would use her RRSP to buy her first home is this. So I mentioned how if you want to access money from your RRSP, it's taxable, but there's two exceptions. Number one is going back to school, lifelong learners plan. Then you can take out money from your RRSP to pay for school. Number two is your first home buyer's plan. So if you want to purchase your first home, then you can actually access money in your RRSP tax-free, okay? So if she uses her RRSP, she can take out up to $35,000 from her RRSP for her first home. So she'll put in 35 grand. This results in a tax refund of $11,000. So you put in 35, we get $11,000 in the mail. That's like a guaranteed 32% return on your investment. It's not a ton of investments that will match that, to be honest.
One more time?
And it's tax-free. And let's
don't
just
know.
say
I
over
just-
the next 5
I
years,
just put down 7 to 9. I think
He's
I'm
gonna
meant
continue
stay
to
there,
invest
keep them all
her
at 10 or we'll have to go late.
and so
I
she's
wonder if
not
people do all
adding
the
a
time.
single dollar to it, but she gets a 4% return. 4% return is not unreasonable. There are high interest savings accounts right now offering 4%. Like I'm talking like a bank account that gives you 4%. So if she did that, then this turns into a $56,000 amount. Keep in mind, once again, she only put in 35. Then she uses the FHSA, the first home savings account. She puts in $8,000 every single year for the next 5 years. She gets a tax refund of $3,000 every single year. 4% growth over the next 5 years. This results in $60,000 or so, if you just do the math. So what is her situation looking like? She can withdraw 35 grand from the RSP. She can take out the full 60,000 from the FHSA. So her down payment amount, you combine these two numbers, she'll have 95 grand for her down payment. And then, oh, there you are. And her retirement savings, she'll have another $21,000 because she won't take out the leftover amount in her RSP. So she still has retirement amounts growing, but she also has $95,000 for her share of the home purchase. So her total assets are 116, even though she only put in 75. The reason of this is not because of the powerful 4% growth on her investments. These are guaranteed investments. You're not taking any risk. The reason why this is so powerful is because of these returns from the tax refunds by getting the tax deductions. Okay. All right. I'll breeze through this really quickly, just so that you know that they're available. Because very often I'll have young parents that come to me and they haven't started these plans. So I know a lot of us probably don't even have kids at this point, but I'll let you at least know about its existence. Our ESP, our Registered Education Savings Plan for children's education, grows tax deferred. Government matches you. So if you put in a certain amount of money, government gives you free money. That's all you need to know right now. If you have a child, give them a SIN number, sign them up, or you sign up and then put in about $200 a month. That's like the main thing that you need to know right now. There's something called an RDSP, Registered Disability Savings Plan. This is often missed with a lot of people. How this works is like this. If you have a qualifying disability, then you get a lot of free money. That's like the gist of it. But how do you qualify? You first need to qualify for something called the disability tax credit. A lot of people might be thinking, well, I'm not in a wheelchair. Disability doesn't just mean you're in a wheelchair. Here's some common examples that allow you to qualify. ADHD, depression, type 1 diabetes. A lot of people I know personally have these things. If you qualify based on these things, you get $3,000 from the government just like that in your pocket. We haven't even used the RDSP yet. So the DTC, disability tax credit, gives you this money. If you qualify with this, then you can open up a registered disability savings plan. The money in here grows tax deferred, and they triple your first $500 contribution, and they double your next $1,000 contribution. Yeah. There's also savings bonds as well. So what that means is you'll get a certain amount of money coming in. It's depending on your income. And it's just free money from the government. And so the point here, and in terms of the withdrawals, you can take money out it will be taxed, but very often because of the amount of tax credits you get for qualifying, it's actually going to be very low or no tax at all. So the point is, if you qualify for the DTC, then put at least $1,500 in. So let's do an entire case study on Sally again. $120,000 income. We put the 35 and 8,000 to the FHSA RSP. Let's say she also donates $500 a month to her favorite registered charity, gets another 2.5 grand in tax savings. Claims tuition, medical expenses, paid about 15 grand for RMT school, let's say, 3,000 tax savings on the low. Uses the TFSA RSP, so now isn't paying any taxes on the investment growth. Let's say, just as an example, it's not uncommon for her to have 100 grand in savings, and she put it in a guaranteed high interest savings account. It's 4%, that's $4,000 that she earns. You don't just get that for free. You actually have to pay tax. But if she put it in a TFSA RSP, then she gets a tax savings of $1,200. Overall, the point is she would actually save $20,000 that year in taxes. So I always ask my clients, here's my list. Here's the number that you care about. What does $20,000 mean to you? You want to take a portion of it and spend it? Sure, let's talk about it. But we can probably take a portion of this and just grow your wealth exponentially while you allow your income to continue to come in to pay for the different expenses. So it's not just you that's earning the money to grow your wealth, but you're actually able to use different leverages, different ways using your own assets to make more money. We haven't even talked about the self-employed planning side of things, so the corporation planning. This next slide is a little bit of a doozy. If you are a business owner, take a picture. I'll walk through it really quickly. I'm going to have a separate workshop for corporate planning later on, but let's try this. Okay, so here's a dashboard that you want to be aware of. Once you're incorporated, these are a couple things that you want to be aware of, okay? So step one, you're sole proprietor, you're earning about, let's say you're able to save about $40,000 in your corporation, $40,000 that you don't need to spend. That's a good general ballpark place to be met for you to incorporate, okay? And then bring your tax bracket from maybe the high 40s or 50s to 11%. Now, is your business profitable? So we want to look at break-even analysis, your income, expenses, and then we want to decide, how do we pay yourself, salary versus dividends? There's different tax implications there. Then we look at, how is your business structure set up? Are we setting it up as just an operating company, or are we setting up a holding company as well, including a family trust? There's different reasons we would do this. A lot of this has to do with tax planning and liability protection. Then we look at, how are we paying yourself with the retained earnings? So your business makes money, there's money in the corporation. How are we actually investing it? One particular tip that I can give you right now is, if you have an operating company, let's say, and you're investing your money in this operating company, if you have too much passive income that's being produced from your investments, that 11% low tax rate actually gets grounded down. So for every dollar above $50,000 that you earn passively in your corporation, that 11% starts to creep up. So you want to be careful about what type of investments you're investing in. And then business continuation is huge. Let's say you have a partnership, not uncommon. If I have one partner and myself, and I'm no longer able to go to work because I get sick, hurt, I pass away, then what happens to my shares, my half of the business? If I'm no longer able to contribute, is it not fair for my business owner to buy my shares out? That agreement is set up with the buy-sell agreement, for example. And then how do they actually buy my shares? Do they just pay for it using their own money? It probably makes more sense to use cheaper dollars using insurance, for example. So that's why you would have a buy-sell agreement in place and then some insurance in place as well. Tough conversations, but they're really important to have. So hopefully that there just outlines a couple areas of planning that you can do as a corporation and as a business owner. Okay, this is often the favorite slide of a lot of my clients, so I'll take my time with it, but it's a lot of just review. And it's called financial circles. It's called financial circles because there's 2 circles on the screen. It's nothing too crazy. And we have accumulation tools and protection tools. It just outlines all the different tools available to Canadians. And it's like this. If I'm playing soccer and I have the best offensive line, anyone here recognize like soccer players, like no soccer players? Okay, so let's say I have I actually don't know soccer players that well, so I don't know why I use soccer all the time. But let's say I have like Messi, who else do I know? Ronaldo, help me out. LeBron James, I don't know. Like you have like really good like offensive line, but I have no goalie and I have no defense. What happens? I'll probably lose. So I need a balance of both. So I don't care how much money you're making and saving. I need to protect that money that I made and saved. But most importantly, we learned this, I need to protect that income that's coming in. If that disappears, it's game over. So what are the tools? Let's take a look. Registered accounts, RSP, TFSA, FHSA, RSP, tax deduction, gross tax deferred, taxable withdrawal, except for home purchase and going back to school. Invest for the long term. That's what it's used for. TFSA, no tax savings. No tax deduction, gross tax sheltered, take it out tax-free. Good for short, medium, long term. FHSA, if you haven't bought a house yet, open up this guy, get a tax savings up front, gross tax-free, take it out tax-free for your first home purchase. Investing for your first home. Remember, once you open up these accounts and you put money in, you then need to invest your money. If you don't invest it, it's just cash, it's not growing. We also then have our non-registered accounts. We have things like bank accounts. The perk is it's very liquid, put money in, take money out, no problem. But it's very little growth, right? Our checking accounts give us how much? Like 0.1% interest. And believe it or not, that 0.1% of interest that I got, you actually have to pay tax on. So the 50 cents that I earned is like not mine. Like I have to pay tax on that growth. So don't put long-term money in there. This is a temporary parking spot for like an emergency fund. And then we have something called a cash margin account. It's the same thing as a non-registered investment account, just different names for it. No tax savings, taxed at growth, taxed on withdrawal. But once you run out of space for these guys, that's kind of when you consider short, medium, long term. How do I protect them? We talked about critical illness insurance, the lump sum amount of tax-free money. If I get sick, use it for whatever you need. Provides for unexpected expenses, allows you to retire on time. Disability insurance, passive income coming in if I can't go to work. Then we have term life insurance. This is the type of life insurance that pays out if I pass away, but it's like I'm renting the insurance. It's like I'm renting a home. You live in the home for, let's say, a year, but after that year, you don't get to keep the home. No equity is built either. For this insurance, you can sign up for like a 10-year term. You're covered for those 10 years. The cost never goes up for those 10 years. But after those 10 years, you have the choice to either renew it for another 10 years, but it'll increase in price. You can convert it to a permanent plan that never increases in price and covers you for the rest of your life, or you can cancel it. There's no fee to cancel. Super low cost, allows you to get like $1 million of coverage, really low cost. That's the perk of it. But long-term, it's not effective. Why people get it is typically for things like a mortgage, right? I have a 25-year mortgage. If I pass away within those 25 years, it's devastating for my family. So that's why I get this. And you can leave behind a life-changing amount of money for a really low cost. Now, there is one, oh no, I went too fast. Oh, there you go. There is one tool that can be used to help both grow your wealth and also protect it at the same time. So let's talk about it. It's called a participating permanent life insurance policy. The reason it's called PAR or participating is because we know that these insurance companies do very well. So wouldn't it be nice to participate with their success as well? They will distribute some of their profits to your account. So this has both an investment component and a life insurance component. Let me explain. As for the life insurance, it's a permanent life insurance. So it's guaranteed to pay out at some point because it's not a matter of if you pass away one day in your life, it's a matter of when. So whenever you pass away, multiples of what you put into this are going to be promised to pay out to whoever you want. When you put money in, there's a death benefit. That means the payout amount. This will pay out today, or it'll actually continue to grow each year because, again, the insurance company distributes some of their profits to your death benefit account. Okay? But you're probably like, I'm not concerned about the life insurance right now. I'm more concerned about what's the investment portion. For the investment portion, it looks like this. Like a TFSA, it grows tax-free. Let's compare it with the margin account, taxable growth. Like a TFSA, you can withdraw it tax-free. Let's compare it to the margin or the non-registered account. Withdrawal gets taxed. There's also this line here, asset continues to grow. Let me do my best to explain this. If I have $1 million in my TFSA, and then I spend $1 million, then how much does it grow by next year if I have nothing in there? Nothing, because there's $0. So even if I have a 100% return, there's no money for it to grow off of. But if I have $1 million in my PAR account, and then I spend that, it'll actually still grow by $50,000 next year or so, as though I never touched it. There's different mechanisms of how you can use this, but that's essentially the summary of how it can be used. You can also pass it to children tax-free. And here's another thing people like. So with my stocks, if my client asks me, how are my stocks looking in COVID? I have to tell them, yeah, it's down like 20% right now. How was it in like 2008? Shoot, you're down like, 35, 40%. Darn. How's my PAR account looking? oh, it's actually doing just as good as yesterday. In fact, it's actually up because it's guaranteed to always go up, never go down, because that's how it's legally designed. So who is this for? It's good for those who are going to be in a high tax bracket in retirement. The reason why is because this is like a tax-free option. And there's a lot of retirement benefits that come our way. Things like old age security, which is just based on like, are you old enough? Have you lived long enough in Canada? But also how much income are you earning in Canada during retirement? If your income is too high, they're saying you're too rich already. We don't want to give you this. So how do we make sure our income seems low? If you only have things like RSPs and pensions as your income, those are all taxable. So if you have $100,000 taxable income, the government's like, shoot, you earn a lot of money. Versus if I earn $100,000 from my TFSA, which is tax-free, and my PAR account, which is tax-free, then in the government's eyes, I earn $0, even though I earn 100,000. So that gives me full old age security and maybe even guaranteed income supplement, additional benefits that are income tested. So that's one point. This might be less of a priority for a lot of us today, but it might become an important thing later on. You can transfer wealth tax efficiently. We'll talk about this at the end as well. I want to mention one thing. This sounds really good. A lot of you guys are taking pictures too. This needs to be used carefully. A lot of people come to me and they're like, I'm ready. I'm like, ready for what? Like, put all of the money there. I'm like, hold on. Like, if you're building a shed from IKEA, do you just have one tool to build the shed? With one screwdriver and no screws can you build this shed? No. So the same way, everything has a reason. Everything has its own purpose. This has a purpose. The RSP has a purpose. Term life insurance has a purpose. Talk to someone who can walk you through your options and actually build a plan using the proper tools the right way for you. Okay, now let's talk about investing. After a 5-minute break. Let's put up the poll and then take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and we'll dive into the investing side. Sure. Okay, let's bring it back. I've got a few questions. I won't answer all of them right now, but the ones I can do really quickly. What self-employed income does it make sense to incorporate at? It's not based on your income. It's more based on how much can you save. So if you don't need $40,000 per year, around that point, then it makes sense to incorporate. What we're considering are things like incorporation costs and the tax savings that you get. So as an example, if you earn 140, but you only need 100,000, so that 40,000 is savings. Rather than like claiming all that as income, getting taxed at a pretty high rate, you would instead just incorporate and then pay yourself a salary or a dividend or a mix of the two from the corporation to yourself. Only the 100,000 that you would need, and then the 40,000 could remain in the company. Purpose of having a savings account when you can utilize a TFSA, would it only be for money you have after maxing your TFSA? So yeah, with the TFSA, depends what your goals are. So let's say you're in a situation where you do need to save for longer term, then it makes more sense for you to put those assets in your TFSA, because that means all the growth that those investments experience can be taken out tax-free, versus the savings accounts aren't going to grow as much. So hopefully that answers the question. I'll answer those for now, and then I'll answer these at the end at Q&A. Okay, let's go back to the slides. All right, let's talk about investing. Everyone's favorite thing, my favorite thing, the reason I got into the industry. All right, so why do we invest? There's two main reasons. Number one is to combat inflation, and then number two is to take advantage of compound interest. Boom, there you are. So let me explain how these things work. Inflation. How much did a Big Mac cost 3 years ago? Discuss with the group real quick, write down a number. And then also, how much did it cost in 2012? And how much did it cost 22 years ago? Write down a number. USD, burger only.
Oh,
Yeah, it says USD. According to Forbes, this is not my opinion.
No, the whole meal is like $15.
Yeah, I'm gonna race through these. Get right to estate planning.
No.
Okay, let's move back. Yell out some, actually, just for the sake of time, I'm just gonna show you the numbers. So it's 581 December 2021, 433, 236. And then just as a bonus, I included this. In the 60s, it was 45 cents, and in the 70s, it was 65 cents. Crazy. The trend that we're seeing is the costs go up. Okay, so that's what inflation does. It's not just for Big Macs, it's for all these different things around us. This meme has nothing to do with finances. It's just so funny. Look at this. Arthur is hilarious. So why do we invest? To combat inflation, so that my money that's just sitting in my bank account, every 25 years or so, it's going to be cut in half of value. Yeah, that's a pretty crazy thing. And also, to take advantage of compound interest. Compound interest allows me to have assets, so money, that creates more money on its own. Let's talk about it. So passive income is a business system or an investment that allows you to make money in your sleep. Earned income is you have to trade your skill, your time, your talents in order to earn income. So let's say we have Arthur and DW, okay? Who is Arthur, you might ask? He's the one who said this. It's only children, DW, not lonely children. Lonely is what you'll be after I sell you. Notice I said that without even looking at the screen. I've memorized that. That's my favorite quote. But let's say we have Arthur and DW. Arthur starts investing right away for 8 years and then stops. So only invest for 8 years. DW waits for the first 8 years and then puts money in for the next 30 years. And so normally I would ask who has more money. For some reason today I'm really off with time, so I'll just keep going. So Arthur only invests for 8 years. Yeah, look at that face. And then DW waits, okay? By the end, even though Arthur only invested for 8 years, he actually has more money than DW. That's the power of compound interest. The money grows on its own because Arthur started sooner, okay? I'm actually gonna skip this slide. I'll let you look at it, and then we're gonna keep going for now. Okay, I'm actually gonna skip this story too. Yeah, it's a funny one, but you can ask me about it later. So what does this really mean? Essentially, with compound interest and our money growing exponentially on its own, it allows us to potentially maybe live out some kind of ridiculous things if we wanted to. The main thing is you work because you want to, not because you have to. It allows you to live out your values. And then normally I would ask, what are these 3 things on the screen? they're kind of ridiculous. So actually this one is less, but this is Miku in Vancouver. This is like some underwater hotel in Dubai. And then these are like eggs of the sun, mangoes that are $200 each or something like that. Yeah, crazy. But let's keep going. So in terms of choosing your investments, you want to choose suitable investments that match your risk tolerance, okay? So we're going to talk about, these are the different options, not all of them, but some of them that are available. So cash, you can see, has very little return, but also very little risk. The more risk you take, the more return you're expected to get. You're expected to get compensated for taking on risk. When I talk about risk, the way I structure investments typically is not going to be in such a way where you're like losing your money for sure, but rather we'll structure in a way where you'll experience ups and downs. So that volatility is what I consider risk, but ideally you never lose your money permanently. That's the hope of how I hope to structure my clients' investments. So let's talk about this. First off, well, what are stocks? Really simply put, it means you own a piece of a company. And so when the company goes up in value, then my ownership goes up in value as well. All you need to know is that these tend to go up and down in value more, so they're a little riskier, but they have higher expected returns. Bonds, on the other hand, are like IOUs. I'm lending my money to McDonald's because they want to research the next best burger. After 5 years, they're going to give my money back with a little bit of interest. The main thing that you need to know is that they go up and down less, but I expect to get paid less. I expect to get less return. So I can own a combination of just stocks, riskier, or just bonds, safer. Or I can own a combination of both of them. You can do this by owning something called an ETF as an example. An ETF is like a basket of fruits. You don't own just apples in that fruit basket or just bananas, but you own a combination of apples and bananas and pears. Or you can own a combination of stocks and bonds. We're talking like 10,000 of them if you wanted to. So what are the expectations? If you have just 100% stock portfolio, it's like a 100-0 portfolio. You can have a balance, a mix of the two, or you can have more bonds than stocks. Now, what's the expected downside of this? You need to be ready for this if you invest in one of these ways. If you're stock heavy, expect your portfolio to potentially drop in half in a single year. If it's more a balance, you'll see it drop less. If you're more bond heavy, you'll see it drop even less. So you might be thinking, well, why would I ever invest in this? Why wouldn't I ever invest in this? It's because you expect to make more money by investing this way. Oh, shoot. The 10-year average target return, according to FP Canada, Financial Planning Canada, is you'll get a 6.5% every year for 10 years. It's average of 6.5. So some years it might be like 20% return. Some years it might be like -20. Some years it might be like up 40, but the average is like a 6.5 versus 3.9. So you expect to make more by taking on that risk. That's the idea. So choose a mix of investments that allows you to stay invested, and time frame matters. If you have to purchase your home in like 6 months, then it doesn't make sense to go 100% stocks because your investments might drop in half, right? So instead, I may be a lot safer, even safer than this, to be honest, because I don't want it to drop at all. But if I have like 40 years, then I can afford to let this come down and go back up. So just, we'll keep going here. Investment summary, make money in your sleep, start sooner. Compound interest multiplies your wealth. You can be a part owner of a company and get to a point where you have enough assets that it makes money for you. Okay, I will go through this pretty quickly. Let's run. So the importance of diversification is this. If I invest in just one company, my entire life savings is dependent on one company. What if that does terribly wrong, right? So instead, I want to own many, many companies and from different sectors, different countries even, so that even if one particular sector, tech sectors does terribly as an example, that's okay. My bank stocks are doing well and so forth. You can own a ETF or an index fund that is globally diversified. I mentioned that before. This shows how you cannot predict which type of investment will do the best. So therefore, we own all of them. Yes, keep going. This has to do with the difficulty of picking the right stock and how difficult it is to individually pick stocks. I'm going to skip it for now, but you can ask me about this later on. Okay. I will go into this as well. So a lot of people then ask me, well, don't stocks go down? Why should I invest in them? Historically, you can see every single time, if you were to invest in like the Canadian stock market, it's gone up more than it's gone down. So as long as you're able to withstand those ups and downs, then those are the returns that they experience. That's why people invest in stocks. I'm going to skip this one too. Okay. I'm going to breeze through this. I have this recorded already for the most part in my previous workshop, so you can just ask me about it. But I'll touch on the main points here. If you already invest through Wealthsimple, this is going to take your portfolio to the next level. So a lot of people come to me, and this is their typical progression. They invest in mutual funds. These often have like high fees, and they're actively managed. They underperform, but so they decide I'm just going to like download Wealthsimple and get the S&P 500 index. This is like the 500 largest companies in the U.S. It's done quite well over the past 40 years or so. And so they realize, hey, you know what? If I only make a bet on the U.S., that's not the best bet. The U.S. doesn't perform the best every year. I'm going to diversify to other parts of the world. So they get a global index, something like VQT, VGRO, for example. Now they ask me, what can I do to level up? So I'm about to show you what you can do to level up. So the S&P 500, it's given us an average return of something like 10% per year. If I invest 100 grand for 40 years with that return rate, it'll result in $4 million. That's financial freedom. That's life-changing money. That's great. But then your question is, what can I do to improve of this? There's actually another investment that's given us a higher average return. So if I take that same scenario of $100,000, invest for 40 years, and put it into this investment instead. So I'm just making an adjustment to the motor of my boat. And the result is the $21 million amount. So that's a $17 million difference. That's kind of like if I were to walk into my favorite restaurant. With this, I don't have to look at the price tag. Nice, just order whatever I want. With this, I walk into the restaurant and I can be like, I like this restaurant, and just buy the restaurant. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference that we're talking about. So then what is this investment? The S&P 500 was originally designed not to make money, but to just track the 500 largest companies in the States. That's what it was designed to do. But these two gentlemen asked the question, is there an investment that is designed to actually make money? So this is Eugene Fama and Ken French. Eugene Fama is essentially the father of modern finance. He won a Nobel Prize for his research, but they discovered an index called small cap value that is more designed to make money. So what I'm sharing is not mine, but it's a Nobel Prize winning literature. I can best explain this by taking you to the 5th grade classroom. The question I'll ask is, will some students in this 5th grade classroom do better than other students? Like, typically, yes. What are the characteristics of one student that allow them to do better over consistent long periods of time than other students? It's like maybe they're harder working, they're goal-oriented, they enjoy reading, and they have supportive friends. We can agree that students with these characteristics will tend to do better than students without these characteristics. Same thing applies to stocks. What are some characteristics of stocks that explain the difference of returns of another stock? Why does one stock tend to do better than another? There's 5 characteristics, but I'm going to touch on 2 today. Small stocks tend to do a lot better than large stocks, and cheaper stocks tend to do better than higher priced stocks. That's a lot of information, but all you need to know are that there are 2 characteristics that I'm discussing that predict successful stock returns over long periods of time consistently. Let's look at the data. So really quickly here, small tends to beat large over 20-year periods. So if you hold it for a 20-year period over a bunch of periods, 82% of the time it wins. And then every single time in history, value has beat growth. Okay. Here's a visual example of value being growth. These are the times that growth has won. These are the times that cheaper stocks have won. So to put this into practice, if I just invest in the S&P 500, so a 10% return, awesome. If I invest and make an adjustment to my boat to slap in value stocks instead, 11.2%. If I make an adjustment and add smaller companies instead of the 500 largest companies, 12.7. And I'm like, why don't I put these characteristics together? There's the 14.4% that I was talking about. Okay, this is my favorite chart, so I want to get here really quick. The question that's being asked is, what I decided to invest in, what are the odds that what I chose was the best choice, the best performing asset? These are all different asset classes, but I just want to compare these two because a lot of people invest in this. They don't know about this. Large cap growth, large high priced companies. If you invest for a 1-year period, this would have been the best choice 10% of the time. If you invest in small cap value, about 25% of the time, it would have been the best choice you could have made. If you're thinking, I'm a long-term investor, I don't care about 1-year periods. Go to 10 years, 6% of the time. 6% of the time, this was the best choice you could have made if you wanted to invest from 2025 to 2035. About half the time, small cap value was the best choice. And then we can stretch it down to 20, 30, 40, zeros across the board. but 72, 82, and 94.3% of the time, this was the best choice you could have made. I make decisions based off statistical significance, not based on noise or opinions of what's going on in the world. All right, so basically most investors are saying we should invest in the S&P 500, NASDAQ index fund, pick large tech stocks. When they make this investment, they're essentially saying that large companies beat small, that high price companies beat low price companies, and that the US will outperform every other country. And so they're saying own large growth stocks in the US. But what we just learned is that 94% of the time, you would have been better off with small value stocks, and there's no way to know which country will outperform. So how do we get started with something like this? So if you're ready to take your investments from the typical ETFs into this next space, this is typically how you'll do it. Fortunately, big banks don't offer small cap value indexes. You'll have to find a private wealth manager. The most popular fund is Dimensional Fund Advisors. So right now on the board of directors, Eugene Fama, the Nobel Prize guy, he's actually on the board of directors, for example. The downside, though, is that unfortunately they are private. So you need to find an advisor that is accepted by DFA themselves. They also have a minimum investment requirement. So that's the other downside. Okay. I'm going to skip the summary because that's a lot. And okay, I have like 3 minutes. This is a helpful chart. In terms of how to create your portfolio, I mentioned your short, medium, and long-term goals should look different. For emergency funds, you need your money now, 100% safe. Maybe I want to buy a car in 1 year, TFSA, so I can access it right away. You can also choose like a high interest savings fund. House purchase, maybe medium term, 5 to 7 years. Use the FHSA, RSP, TFSA. Maybe a mix of stocks and bonds. So it's not too crazy ups and downs, but I'm still getting decent returns. And for retirement, 20 years plus, I can afford to take the risk because even if it comes down 50%, I can let it come down and then expect it to come back up. I might go small cap value fund for that. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is estate planning. This is really important, so I want to go into it. We need to understand the way, so it's like, okay, I helped you make all this money and you have all these assets under your name, but how is it taxed later on? Were there things we could have done earlier on to structure in such a way to decrease the tax bill later? So it helps to know this now. So if we have assets that are under our own name, and if we pass away, this is what happens. The first thing is all the money under your name goes into this treasure chest called an estate. And then what happens is, so my investment accounts, my real estate properties, my savings accounts, it's all then considered sold. If I sell it, that means I made money, I get taxed. I then get hit with an additional thing called probate fees. So that's what happens if I own assets just under my own name. As an example, I have real estate properties, non-registered investment accounts, and let's say an RSP, okay? If I pass away, and let's say I had $2 million of growth in my investments here, and I have an RSP that's valued at $500,000. It's not unreasonable. 50% of these guys will be taxable, and 100% of my RSP will be taxable. So just to do the math, essentially, it's like I earned $1.5 million at death. That's how you calculate the tax bill, the taxes that are billable. It's going to be taxed at the highest rate. So somebody has to pay an $800,000 amount at death. Okay. So then the question becomes, how do I avoid this as much as I can? How do I structure my assets now so that I avoid as much of this as I can? So instead of having it just owned under my own name, number one thing you can do is have jointly owned accounts. So jointly owned accounts allow something called right of survivorship to happen. If I have real estate that's jointly owned with someone else under joint tenancy, that's the proper term. Not tenants in common, but joint tenancy. Then if I pass away, it rolls over to the survivor. It never has to go into that treasure chest, and then I can avoid those probate fees. The other thing is I can have a joint bank account. Oh gosh. Oh. Do you know where the lights are? It's behind the reception desk. Yeah, thank you. So with joint bank accounts, it'll just roll over to the other joint holder. Okay, so if I have a non-registered account and if I don't have anyone set up as a joint holder, then if I pass away, it goes into the treasure chest, it gets taxed and then distributed, right? Versus if I have a joint holder, it can just roll over. The last thing is I can attach beneficiaries. So for these types of accounts, I can attach beneficiaries. RSP, if I pass away, if I attach a beneficiary, it goes around that treasure chest and goes straight to my loved one. TFSA and FHSA, I want to attach something called the successor holder. What that is rather than having my TFSA sold, taken out of my TFSA, and then given to the loved one, it goes from one TFSA to another TFSA. That's successor holder. That's really important. Life insurance, you want to set up a beneficiary so that it goes to somebody. And then a segregated fund is like a non-registered investment, but you can add a beneficiary to it. Segregated funds need to be used carefully as well. They have very high fees. You get them typically for the contract, not for the investment. So hopefully that's helpful. Last slide here. So what are the things that we should be looking at? Wills, enduring power of attorneys, healthcare agreements, buy-sell. If there's no will in place, this is really important. This is what happens. So a will spells out wishes of how my assets should be distributed and who takes care of kids. If there's no will in place, then there's no quarterback that tells the government how my money should be distributed. The government will have to appoint that. When the government tries to appoint this, it takes a very long time, but there's a big tax bill that needs to be paid. Your estate is frozen. Who pays that tax bill? Your loved ones might have to. How long is it until they get access to your accounts? It can take like 2 years. So somebody maybe has to go into debt to pay for those tax bills because they can't use your assets to pay for it, as an example. Okay, so that's really important. The other thing as well, in terms of having somebody else distribute your estate for you, is if you just like Google the public guardian trustee, for example, the government who helps you distribute your estate, they don't have the best ratings. There's even like, there's some pretty ridiculous comments. I don't really encourage you to look at it, but if you look at the comments there, it's like very sad. So avoid having to leave a 1-star review and just have these things in place. Enduring power of attorney may actually apply to like all of us here. This one allows somebody to make financial decisions on our behalf if we're mentally incapacitated, if we're not able to. So if I get into a terrible car crash and mom and dad need to access my money, they actually can't unless I have this document in place. Healthcare agreements is the same thing except for health-related decisions. And then if you're a business owner, then you want to buy, sell. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Okay, I'm like a few minutes over, but in terms of the summary, for insurance, DICI life. For budgeting, pay yourself first, get a will, power of attorney, healthcare directive. Part 2, I'll send these slides out. Grow your wealth, save on taxes, deductions and credits, use the proper accounts. For investing, invest. To take your investments to the next level. Small cap value, find a DFA advisor. Thank you so much for taking your time to join me here. If you would like a complimentary one-on-one chat, I'm able to help you out with this. Typically what the process is we look at your situation now. Where do you want to go? What are the steps you're supposed to take? Get to know your situation. We'll meet a second time and then I'll give you a financial prescription of, hey, you can do these sort of things to improve your situation. A little bit more about our firm itself is if you were interested in having a lunch and learn, this is what we do. So we go and teach financial literacy and then we help implement the tools into their own accounts. There we go. Thank you for coming. Sorry I went over time. All right. Just the last thing is if you could fill out this feedback form, you'll be entered to win a gift card. Oh, sure, I can answer questions. Or I guess we can let people fill out the feedback form real quick and then answer some questions. I think I took my time too much in the beginning. Let's see the questions. Oh, there's a link in the PowerPoint slide deck at the bottom in the, yeah, oh, you got it. Oh, yes. Sure, you can put it on the screen probably. Okay. If you need to head out sooner, you can, yeah, just excuse yourself, but I'll be running through some of the Q&A. Has everyone done the survey? So we're kind of, we'll give it maybe like a little bit more, and then let me just read these ahead of time. How much percentage difference is offered to your current company would switching jobs for? This depends what you need your money for. Disability insurance differ from extended benefits. Yes, I can answer that. Did you want to hop in for someone?
Good topic. You don't know.
Sure. If there's like something you're like really wanting to pitch in on. Yeah. Scroll down.
Love these questions. They're so good.
Pens. Gold bars. Insurance advice apply for someone who is not insured by resign. Depends as well. Yes, you can. Seems like one. Yeah, that is right. You can only take a forward 8,000 only for FHSA. 1 year's worth only. This one. Yeah, TFSA RSP you can. Okay. Just for the sake of time, I guess I'll dive into some of these questions. All right, let's see. This is not really a finance question, I guess. This first one, how much of a percentage difference for the raise offered compared to your current company would be worth switching jobs for? If you don't need them, like if you're happy with whatever income either of them are offering and you don't need a ton of money, I guess, like depends what your goals are, right? Then you just switch based on other merits of the job versus if your priority, your value is like, oh, I want to retire sooner or buy a particular house. I just need money for a certain goal. Then you would consider that and just run the numbers. And it also depends on your lifestyle as well. So this is more of like a value-based question of like, what do you want your lifestyle to look like and how much money do you need for your goals? That's what I would typically say. How does disability insurance differ from extended health offered through employer? So it's the same thing, but then the definitions might differ. If you have an awesome plan through work, a lot of people do, then you don't need disability insurance personally. However, there's often gaps in place. And so you want someone to look over it for you and identify those gaps, explain to you, this is what it means, right? If XYZ scenario happens, this is kind of what happens. Are you okay with it? If you're not, then we can fill those gaps using a personal plan. That's the idea. One common example I guess I'll give is very often I'll see disability insurance that covers for 2 years and then stops after 2 years. If you're in a really bad situation where you're unable to work even after 2 years, are you okay with that? Or would you like to have coverage that starts personally at the 2-year mark and covers you until retirement? So a lot of people top it up that way. Or they have disability insurance that only pays them $1,000 a month. Is that enough? Maybe not. So maybe you get $2,000 personally, something like that, if 3,000 is enough, as an example. Let's go down. Is there a set net worth different ages should be aiming for? There's different ballparks that the internet suggests. That also is a very personal question, right? It's like, if you hope to be retiring in like Thailand, where costs are much lower versus you want to be retiring in like New York, then it's really different. So it's hard for me to answer that question as well. It's like, depends what you need money for. Oh, Jacob, no worries. I earn 50,000. Do you think I can be financially stable enough to eventually retire by 65, given the current economic climate and housing prices? If I'm talking specifically retirement, there's 3 bridges that you have to go from where you are in your working years to retirement. So the first are your pension plans through work. If you have awesome pension plans, like you're a teacher or you work in a hospital, man, that municipal pension plan is a beast. Like make sure you're in it. Sometimes I talk to nurses who opt out of it because they don't want to put money into it. Oh, not a good idea. You should probably, for the most part, be using it. It's just guaranteed income for life. The second one is essentially your own personal savings. In order to know how much personal savings you need, you look at the first bridge and then the last pillar, which is like CPP and OAS, so government benefits. So you look at how much is the government going to give me? How much is my pension plans going to give me? And then how much do I want from retirement? It's like, oh, I have a gap of, I still need like $3,000 a month. Then I need to save up enough so that my personal savings spits out $3,000 a month from like 65 to 95 or whatever. So hopefully that helps. It's like, it just depends again. So I keep saying it depends, kind of sucks, but it's the reality. So it's possible depending on how much you want and then depending on what you have coming in. Mortgage or RSPs. If you want to talk math and risk tolerance, then as of like current rates, they're pretty high. So it could make more sense to make a bigger lump sum mortgage payment. But this also has to do with like personal preference. So again, personal finances are very personal. If you hate the idea of having this debt, it feels like it's weighing you down. Research also shows that people with more debt are often unhappier. And if it would be a huge sigh of relief for you to put these payments towards your mortgage, then honestly, that's the right answer. But if you're able to find an investment that does quite well, and then putting money towards your RSPs, depending on your tax bracket, will probably mathematically be better. Just because, as I showed before, if you have a $120,000 income and you put money into your RSP, man, you bring your tax rate down so much and you get a massive tax refund. It's like a 20 to 30% interest earned compared to the mortgage, which might be like 5 to 7% kind of deal. So it depends. It's like, what's your risk tolerance? What's your comfort level with debt? And then do you prefer, I guess, having that mortgage versus looking for the best like outcome math-wise, like numbers-wise? Tips on investing in gold bars. I don't know enough. Jacob, I don't know if you want to comment. Yeah, so maybe not. Yeah. So Ian just messaged me later. Yeah. Would this insurance advice apply for someone who's not unsure or who's unsure, let's say, about residing in Vancouver? Depends on the type of policy that you're getting. So for example, like a critical illness insurance policy for the most part will pay out anywhere. But a disability insurance policy, for the most part, you have to come back to Canada to claim. That's like my understanding up to this point. A permanent participating policy, if you're using it for the tax shelter, this may not be recognized as tax exempt in other jurisdictions, other parts of the world. So it depends on the policy that you're going for, but those are the three quick answers. So yes and no, depends what you're applying. Mixed and match insurance, can we get work and private at the same time? Yes, and a lot of people do. Seems like a lot are wrong. Heard you can continue to carry forward contribution room. I'm guessing for the FHSA, carry forward 8,000 only. What I mentioned was correct. You can only carry forward 8,000 at a time for the FHSA. TFSA and RSP, room is just made. And even if you don't have an account, and that carries forward from everything that's accumulated. But FHSA specifically, I don't know why, but you can only carry forward 8,000. Okay, that's good. You can have a HISA in a TFSA, yes. HISA is a high interest savings account, and a lot of them are offering 4% right now. I guess a quick tip could also be, there's like high interest savings account ETFs. So I mentioned how ETFs can buy stocks and bonds. Your ETF can also have just high interest savings accounts. And then they offer like 5% plus right now. Fully liquid, yeah. Is debt taxed? Should I borrow and invest with that? So debt is not taxed. That's often one of the ways that business owners will get tax-free income by leveraging against something and then getting a form of a line of credit. It's like a tax-free income. Should I borrow and invest with that? Depends what stage in life you're at. And if you have, there's like a checklist of things that you want to make sure you consider. Usually no, it's like a lot of risk. But if you're very savvy with your investments, it could make sense. It means that like when your investments go up, because you have so much, because you borrowed money to invest, your growth can be significant. But also when investments go down, then you're really going to feel it then. So depends on risk tolerance and your level of knowledge. Sweet. Okay. When can you withdraw from an RSP account? Anytime. Penalties for withdrawing early. Jake confirmed this with me, but 25% withholding tax. So you can withdraw at any time, but it's like, there's a couple of downsides to this. Let's say I put money in and then like next year I need my money, so I take it out. First of all, there's that withholding tax, 25%. Depends how much you take out. And then also I can't put that money back in. So TFSA, if I take money out, I can put it back in the following calendar year, January 1st. RSP, if I take money out, I can't put it back in. That room is gone, okay? But you can take it out anytime. You're forced to take it out once you turn 71 though, because your RSP gets converted into this thing called a RIF. And then you have to take a certain minimum amount. But no, yeah, you can take out money from your RSP anytime, but you're just gonna get taxed as if it's income. elaborate on the deductions for moving expenses. So if you move from one place to another place for work, and it has to be 40 kilometers closer to work, then some of those expenses that you paid for the moving, then those can be used to deduct your taxes. Contributing to FHSA versus RRSP. So things to consider, I didn't mention this in the workshop, but for the RRSP, you can take out 35 grand from your RSP for your home purchase. But over a period of 15 years, you actually have to put that money back in. If you do the math, it comes down to something like 200 a month or so. So make sure you have the cash flow for that. Make sure you don't buy a home that's so expensive that you don't have $200 to put back into your RSP. Otherwise, it's going to be considered taxable. So you need to have a little bit of wiggle room in your budget, and then you can put it back in. Otherwise, the FHSA, you can put that money in or take that money out, and you don't ever have to recontribute it back in. It probably, for the most sense, makes more sense to prioritize the FHSA for that reason. Plus, if you don't end up using it, this will transfer to your RSP anyways. Purpose for having a savings account, if you can utilize a TFSA. Oh, I mentioned that. Sweet. Anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
Here. Up on the screen.
Sure.
The minimum requirement for the small cap value.
Depends on the advisor you talk to. So some advisors like 2 million. It's like, geez. Some advisors 500,000. Some of them 50,000. Depends on the advisor. Yeah.
This one, right?
How do we know which type of investment to choose for RSP, TFSA, FHSA for most growth? What would be considered a good percentage? Advice on managing investments ourselves. Since bank takes a cut of portfolios for you. I'll start with each. There's like 3 questions in this. I'll start with the first one. Which type of investment is based on time frame and risk tolerance? I would say those are the 2 main things. If you have a short time frame, be safer because you don't want your money to go up and down like crazy. If you have a long time frame, you can be a little bit more aggressive. And then what's your risk tolerance? If you're going to freak out because your investments drop 50%, then maybe don't go 100% stocks, but maybe you have a mix of stocks and bonds. If you're going to freak out even on like 2% drop, then maybe just go high interest savings, GICs, money market, that sort of stuff. What's a good percentage? It depends what your goals are. So yeah, like, how much do we need to have for retirement, for example? And how much can we save now? If based on the math, you need to hit a 6% rate of return, then the 6% is a good rate of return. If you're asking like 100% stock portfolio, I guess my chart before showed it, something like a 6.5 is the projected FP Canada 10-year average. Managing investments yourselves, pros and cons of the 3 options you have. So you can go to a bank, go to a private wealth manager, manage it yourself. Going to the bank is nice because very convenient. They have everything with you already. Somebody does it for you. The downside, though, is that very often high fees. They're limited to only their bank products. And oftentimes it's like actively managed mutual funds, which tend to not do the best consistently. So you're buying like convenience. Private wealth manager, or I'll start with the DIY. If you do it yourself, you have total control, super low fees. If you're like pretty savvy with your investments, but you got to be like really rigid with your emotions. If you're going to freak out because markets drop and sell, then the cost of doing it wrong was huge. It's like technically you could Google how to fix a toilet on your own, but sometimes you just hire the plumber to do it right the first time in case you mess it up. So the upside is you have total control and super low fees, but the downside is if you do it wrong, the cost can be high. Private wealth managers is somebody handholds you and does everything for you, convenience. They have access to private investments and consider your investment as a part of your whole plan. The downside is oftentimes high minimums. And then there are still fees in there. It's usually like a 1% fee compared to a bank would be like 2.5 or so. So hopefully that answers that. Yeah. $35,000 withdrawal from RSP, one time only, yes. Person when $40,000 retained earnings around there. So if you can save $40,000 a year or so, then that's a good time to consider. However, you also want to consider things like, what do I need money for? If I have a big purchase coming up, then maybe it doesn't make sense for me to incorporate right now. Although you can actually get different types of loans against the corporation for purchasing real estate, for example. So it depends what you need your money for. How risky is it to invest in small cap value investments? So if we're talking volatility, there's slight increased volatility, but when it comes to DFA specifically, because you're actually diversifying amongst these different characteristics as well, it's actually considered even less volatile. In terms of just the, I guess, what you're investing in, the reason you're getting more return is because you're taking on greater risk. That's like investment theory. So the reason why, if you Google like efficient market hypothesis, the idea is that markets, they take in all available information and price it into the current stock market. In order for you to have any sort of outperformance, you need to take greater risk to be compensated. And so these 5 factors, small, so size, value, investment, profitability. What's the last one? Oh yeah, beta. So market, like if you invest in these things, if you expose your portfolio to these things, it's considered riskier, which is why you're getting compensated more. So hopefully that answers it. So from a practical standpoint, it's not much riskier, but from a like investment theory perspective, it is riskier. That's why you get paid. Opinion on cash.to. So this is an example of a high interest savings ETF. Take pictures. Yeah, it's nice sunset. Yeah. And this is also for online. Cash.to is a high interest savings ETF. To my understanding, you can't access it anymore. Oh, you can? Okay. So I think it offers like 4% or so right now. So that's like a valid option that you could potentially consider for your short-term investments.
All right, Dan. Good job.
Okay.
You did really well.
Okay. Looks like team 2 won. So team 2, go ahead and grab stuff. Just one thing first, and then the other team can go, and then you guys can just distribute. Yeah.
Can I just see if I can-
Sorry?
see if I can- can I-
Oh yeah. Thank you everybody for joining online. It's been a pleasure. Sorry for going over time. And yeah, just message me if you have any questions. Always happy to help. Wait. I gave. Can we save the chat?
Thanks. Ida. Actually, I want to say about Ida.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, Andres.
Thank you.
Actually, who meets you, but you might.
Right on.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Great questions, Amanda. Dasha.
Oh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
Disability
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
A lot of people don't know this, like the whole ADHD, right? It's
Yeah.
impossible to get into ADHD in Vancouver.
Mm,
pretty much.
yeah, that's
So you
true.
have to Spend like $1,800.
Yeah.
for 3 years. For work PC,
Hmm.
they actually have programs, you're eligible through them, so like if you're, any of your people are like one of the spouses is
Yeah.
unable to work right now because of depression or ADHD, whatever.
Yeah.
They would qualify as either unemployed or underemployed or like risky employment,
Okay.
unsustainable employment.
Yeah.
If they are eligible for WorkSafe, they actually have their own training program.
Oh, okay.
Investment in like 2 to 3 weeks.
That's good.
Completely covered.
And it's covered. Yeah. Wow.
Completely covered, so yeah.
Huge
If
tip.
anybody is worth, they're
Yeah.
trying to get into the whole disability.
Yeah.
retirement, Whatever else.
That's a great tip. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Can we make sure we save the chat before we close it?
You here?
Oh yeah.